Hey guys, welcome back to yet another video, and today I want to go over the best setup in order to catch bluegill. I've owned a couple of ultralight setups, about 7 or 8 at this point, and long story short, it doesn't matter how much you really spend on your setup as long as you have the proper one. Now, this is my Bass Pro Shop Micro Plus rod and reel combo. I got this thing for probably less than 30 bucks about 7 or 8 years ago. It's ran like a champ, and I've caught just as many bluegill on this as I have with my $120, $50 setup. Long story short though, what you're really looking for is a size 1000 or 100 size reel, depending on the company. You can step up to 200 if you think you're going to be going for crappie, things of that nature, and an ultralight rod. These need to be really flexible at the tip, and that's what allows that hook to set up. Plus, it's just a little bit more fun to fight. While this is not absolutely necessary, I like a one-piece construction personally. I do have some two-piece constructions. They work fine, never had an issue, but I'm just a one-piece construction person. I think it has a little bit better flex point in the rod itself so that you don't have that junction point. But nevertheless, that is one of the cheaper setups. If you want something a little bit nicer, something a little bit lighter, a little bit more agile, this 310 Pro Mitchell does a pretty good job with that. It's enjoyable to use. And on this Vortex Gander Mountain rod, it has been a treat. Everything I have is about 5.5 feet to 6 feet, sometimes 5 feet. I like to keep my rod lengths shorter, that way when I get around brush and whatnot, it's easier to cast in. More importantly than the rod and reel, in my opinion, is the line you use. While the amount you spend on your ultralight combo does not matter all that much, line choice does. 2-pound test monofilament is by far my favorite line to use, especially with live bait for bluegill. And some naysayers out there say, oh, it's way too light. I promise you I have plenty of footage out there that proves otherwise. Now, you're not going to catch a 10-pound bass on this unless you're very gentle, but you know, smaller bass and things like that that may every once in a while hit while you're bluegill fishing, you'll be able to bring those in. And maybe wondering, is there really a difference between 2-pound and 4-pound? Absolutely. 2-pound is so thin that when you cast it, you have additional sensitivity. You're able to cast it farther, which keeps you farther away from brim beds, whether you're on a dock or a boat or anything of that nature. But one of the best things about it, compared to 4-pound, is as you move your rod tip or you're moving away from a specific spot or bed or wherever you're fishing, it's going to move your bait farther and out of the target area. This 2-pound just skips along in the water, so as you're going farther away, it doesn't move your bait nearly as much, which means it stays in the target area longer and usually gives you additional strikes. I've used 2 and 4 on a lot of my combos to see if there was a difference. There has been. 2 wins out every single day. If you're looking for the simplest and easiest brim setup, I will leave that linked here in the video, and it's going to catch you a lot of brim. However, if you're looking for the best setup for varying weather conditions and depths, stay tuned. First and foremost, you're going to need these little slip bobber knots. You can buy these really, really cheap, a couple bucks. Essentially, it's just a plastic bead along with a line. And you'll see how this works in a second, but you tighten this line around your main line, and it allows you to quickly change the depths of where you want to set your bobber. So this is how it works. First, you're going to put on your top line right here, and this is going to be your knot. Then you have your bead, which allows the line to run smoothly, as well as gives you a stopping point. And then you finally have your bobber. I highly recommend these teal bobbers for this application, mainly due to the fact they're really thin and they have a tiny bit of weight to them, which helps with casting distance, but they're really smooth on the inside, which makes the slip bobber setup work really well. You can get away with using cheaper bobbers such as this one. However, the plastic on the inside is a bit rougher, so the line doesn't run quite as smoothly through. Once you have it set up in this way, simply going to take your line, going to pull out your piece of plastic. Now you have your line attached. You're going to pull that tight. You can wet it if you so choose. By having it tight, that's going to put a little bit more pressure on your main line, make it a little bit more difficult to slip up and down, and then cut out as much tag end as possible. And now you have your slip bobber setup ready to go. As you can see, it's freely moving, but as soon as it hits that knot, it stops. Now, slip bobber setups can be a little bit finicky, and this is dependent upon the hook you use or the bait you use. So have a varying pack of weights with you, and that way you can best determine how much weight you're actually going to need to make this bobber stand up properly and sit up straight. Now, with that being said, usually you end up with 2 of the smallest weights in a pack. That tends to be enough, and it sets the bobber just about perfectly and gives it a nice and smooth fall. Now, in terms of hooks, this is where I differ from quite a few people. You have a few variety of hooks that you can use, and it really depends on what your objective is that day. So for instance, if you're trying to catch just as many bluegills as possible, these little J hooks, this is a size 10, you can use a size 8 if you prefer. They are incredible when in terms of catching bluegill. This will catch all the bluegill you want. It's going to catch anywhere from large bluegill to small bluegill. They do have a tendency to go to the back of their throat, so it could damage some, especially a little bit larger ones, things of that nature, but it's a great way to catch them. What I like to use when targeting larger bluegill specifically is circle hooks. These size 2 circle hooks are phenomenal. You don't have to hardly do any work with your rod tip. You simply let them take your bait and run with it. And I've never had a foul hook or one get into the gills with a circle hook. It just about always ends in the corner or upper part of the mouth. Since I'm going for larger bluegill, I will be using a circle hook for my application. Now, one thing to note when it comes to hooks is the size 10, you can just use a uni knot for these. However, when it comes to circle hooks, it's best to use a snail knot. While I'm not going to do a snail knot today, there are plenty of tutorials out there that can better demonstrate it than I can here. There's my circle hook all tied up. These size 2s are perfect when trying to go after larger bluegill, things of that nature. I also have my lead set very close to my hook. I use crickets a lot, and since they have a tendency to float, by setting your weight lower on the line, you keep your bait in the target area you really want to, instead of having it float up a little bit higher. Now, if you're interested in these circle hooks, you can go check them out at Fleafly. I'll leave a link in the description below, and I'll leave a link as well to a video in which I use these circle hooks, and you can see just how effective they are. With that being said, I want to take this set out real quick, and we'll see how the casting distance is and how everything works. Quick and easy to make changes. Being able to change your bobber depth on the fly is nice. You simply have this little stop right here. You can move that up or down the line as needed. But where this setup really comes in handy is it consolidates your weight. Since that bobber is able to slip up and down, it sits along your weights, your hook. If you had bait on here, all of that's consolidated in one spot. Plus, with these teal bobbers, with how thin they are and skinny, and this 2-pound line, it really gives you amazing casting distance, even into the wind. I want to try to cast this to the end of this pool right here. It's about 80 feet. With a normal setup where you just had a foam bobber, 4-pound test and everything, good luck trying to get that. You're really going to be pushing it. But with this thing, even on a cheaper rod, not an issue. And that's without even putting a lot of force behind it. This creates a lot of distance between you and beds, things of that nature. Gives you a lot more ability to fish in windier conditions, which usually hampers a lot of bluegill fishermen because it's harder to cast into those nearly to the end of the pool, again, with minimal effort. And that's on a $30 rod and reel setup. If I went over to the other one, that $120 setup, it's a little bit smoother on the line guides. Get 100 feet with this all day. I'd probably cast right over the pool if I could. Yep, easily 120, 140 feet. This is where you'll have to play for your weights a little bit, but simply what you want to see is as the bobber hits the water, the line smoothly goes through and it hits your bobber stop. If it's not hitting the bobber stop or it's sitting flat on top, you just need to add a little bit more weight, and that's what's going to give you this effect. Well guys, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to share, like, subscribe for more, and as always, thanks for watching.